Hello, everyone. Welcome to another forecast. I'm Claire Moon, and we're going to be talking about the astrology of April 2026. So, if you're joining me yet again, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. There's a chat. If anybody else is over there, of course, you're welcome to have fun. Ask me questions if you have any. That's why I like to do this live, is to give people an opportunity to ask me, about any certain dates or any things they have going on in April that they want me to look at the date for. I'm not going to get to every single date in April, but I'm going to try to give you the highlights as usual. Um, let's see, announcements. I feel like, wow, today is such a lunar benefic, lunar malefic enclosure thing. Like there's so many enclosures of the moon this month. It's a little bit like this. But yeah, check out Astro-seek. I did use that to verify all of my work there. But you can also find that below. There's a link to that lunar enclosure calculator if you want to see all of that data where it comes from. Um, I have a discount code. My usual kind of what I spend most of my time doing is doing one-on-one consultations with people. So if you want a birth chart reading, want me to do the personal forecasting for you, really bespoke and tailored to your chart and your unique timing, you can get a reading with me, and you can find all of my info at www.aligninglightastrology.com. All of it's on there, my services, booking, scheduling. If I write, it's on there. I have a newsletter sign up, and that's how you can get all this info sent to you once every month. So there's also a newsletter sign up on my website. And that is, if I do like a quarterly discount code, it'll also be coming through the newsletter usually. And so that this month or this quarter is the discount code is Equinox for 10% off any of my services. Equinox, Equinox. And that is good through the month of April. So it expires May 1st. So if you want to get reading with me, you can use that discount code. And finally, last piece of announcement before we get started, I am going to be increasing my prices on April 5th. So this is kind of the final notice on that. I've mentioned it a few times, but I will be increasing all of my prices by about 15-ish, 10 to 15-ish dollars, depending on the service. Electional astrology services are not changing. Those prices are staying the same, but everything else is going to have to increase, unfortunately, because capitalism, and I have to pay my bills. So, um, I think that's it. I think that's it. So if there's any questions, you can always email me. My email is aligninglight@gmail.com. And if anything is concerning, of course, email me. I'd rather have people email me than wonder. Let's see if anybody's here. I don't see anyone yet. So I'm gonna get into my dates of interest per usual. And then I am going to do kind of a little reflection on March. We're still in March. I'm recording this on March 28th. And then get into some general thoughts for April. And then I'll get into the details. So let me grab my datey dates. We've got on the first of the month, we open up with a full moon in Libra on April 1st. On April 3rd, Mercury is going to reach their maximum elongation. So Mercury is going to be really easy. The easiest is going to be for us to see Mercury in the sky. That's going to be around the first week of April, approximately. On the 3rd of April, we also have a Venus-Pluto square. On the 9th, Mars enters Aries. Approximately around the 11th, give or take, depending on location, Saturn is going to start appearing in the morning sky. On the 14th, Mercury enters Aries. On the 17th, we have an Aries New Moon. On the 19th, the Sun enters Taurus. On the 23rd, Venus enters Gemini. And then on the 25th, Uranus enters Gemini. So those are our main highlights this month. And dialing it back, rewind. Old business. One thing that I can't remember if I covered very well last month in March was Venus's first few degrees into Taurus. So I think that's actually where I would like to start today. Um, Hi, Cranberry. Yeah, if you're in the chat, let me know where you are if you want to. No expectations, only possibilities. Um, but let me get my wheel up here finally, and we will take a look at the end of this month. And we will take a look at Venus, who is going to be moving into Taurus. And that's going to be happening on the 30th. So just in a couple days from now, if you're listening to this live, we've got Venus entering into a new sign. They're going to be feeling a lot better in Taurus. However, and this was the thing I couldn't remember if I really mentioned last month or not, but the first few days of this, the first few days of Venus and Taurus, might be not as like classic, chill, slower paced Taurus that we would usually expect. I think because of this Pluto Venus square, that there could be some intensity, some tension, maybe some pressurized situations. And those can come in forms that are get my little meter out. Everyone knows my little hand meter. We've got unfavorable things, neutral things, favorable things. So, there can be tense things that we want to do. Um, the classic thing I've probably been using this too much of as an as an example, but I love it, is I noticed like the first several instances of me having to hang out with my partner's mom, so essentially my mother-in-law. Uh, the first few times of that were kind of intense, kind of high pressure. Really wanted it to go well. Is meeting your mother-in-law a bad thing? No, it's not. It is necessary, unfortunately, sometimes. So yeah, it can be natural, intentional stuff. And also, everyone is on dating notice. So if you're out there and you're dating, you're playing the field, intense experiences can be beautiful. Really like intense romantic experiences, great, have them. But know that that's not the same thing as a meaningful experience or an experience that is meant to bind people together for a long time. So everyone's on dating notice until I'm just gonna be conservative and say like the 6th of April. I want Venus 3 degrees away on the other side. So dating notice, first week of April. Anyone cool that you meet, anyone really exciting that you meet, just they're gonna be kind of on the wait and see pile for a while. Okay. All right. I think that's the only thing that I really want to make sure I drove a point home about from last month. And then the other things that I wanted to mention were I'm actually going to read a couple celebrity charts to get us started. I found some interesting stories in March around the eclipses, February and March around the eclipses, and I wanted to talk about those. So yeah, old business in terms of things that have been happening, things that are done. The eclipses are over. So let's look at these. We had one on February 17th, and that one was a great beginning or ending, new chapters, chapters closing, chapters opening when it comes to the Aquarius house topics in your chart. So um, that was on the 17th, and these come in sets of two. And so our next one after that was on the 3rd of March. And that was in the lunar full moon eclipse in Virgo. And so that was a eclipse really shining a light on the Virgo house topics in your chart, and maybe especially around like culminations, things coming to fruition, things peaking in their storyline, maybe even things that you've been working on for 6 months since September-ish of 2025, now really coming to their culmination, to their peak, their fruiting 6 months later around March. So we got through those. If you're listening to me now, that means you made it through. So great. And there's a few things around these eclipses. And this is where I wanted to bring up a couple celebrity charts. So the first person that I wanted to bring up was Tyra Banks. So I'm going to be talking about Tyra. Actually, trigger warning, content warning, probably going to be talking about modeling, body, modeling related trigger warning if anyone kind of doesn't feel like talking about bodies or models, or I'm not going to be talking about it for long, but I'm going to talk about Tyra because I was totally watching America's Next Top Model when it was on. Like when it was on, I was a freshman. I was like in high school. I graduated high school and I was a freshman in college when America's Next Top Model was like all the rage. And so this documentary that recently came out about America's Next Top Model really kind of taking Tyra Banks to task about some things, and not only her, but the executive producer, I think it was Ken Mock. I can't remember his name exactly, but him too. Yeah, it was I really highly recommend it if you do remember watching that show, because it's validating. Because back then I remember thinking, huh, that's a choice, and now I'm like, oh yeah, 20 years later. Um, yeah, let me actually find Tyra's chart here because she got eclipsed. And the thing with the eclipses is that they tend to, in terms of like people being really affected by them, like um, I think everybody is affected by eclipses, but if we go to that kind of Mesopotamian symbolism of the noticing that pattern of kings and sovereigns, queens dying or having something happen during eclipses, I think people who are in power tend to really see the effects of eclipses sometimes. And so here we had an eclipse in Tyra Banks' eighth around the time that the the documentary was being aired in February. We had another eclipse in their third, and that was all fine and good. I think I was more interested actually in terms of her chart with Saturn switching signs and Saturn being in their ninth. But how I've been interpreting the eclipses for her was that great beginnings and endings in the eighth house. So for Tyra, this February eclipse, a great beginning and ending in terms of her eighth house collaborations, her eighth house shared resources, taxes, debt, complex finances. I imagine that uh, after this documentary, it didn't help her reputation at all. And I can't imagine any sane person, granted, I'm from a different place than Hollywood. I can't imagine a sane person working with her again, you know? So, yeah, a place of collaborations, probably going to change. Maybe how she collaborates with people now that this has all come to light and she's finally gotten consequences for her behaviors. Yeah, going to be doing eighth house stuff a little differently, probably. And then that culmination in the third in terms of, yeah, what do you actually have to say? What is coming out? And that third house, I mean, also I think about primary education and the beginnings of a learning curve and students and teachers of foundational things. And so what was being really highlighted here, I think, too, was the way that she talks to mentees or students, the way that she treated those third house initiates or those third house kind of people learning the foundational things about modeling at that time. And we got to see exactly how she was operating in that familiar, regular space for her. So that's interesting. But then finally, I was wondering, those eclipses happening, really triggering a big event. But what's been going on the past year or two, because they didn't just make this documentary over the course of the last 2 months. It probably took them a year. And I tried Googling and finding like when were they creating this documentary? When were they doing the tapings and the interviews? And it was pretty much the whole year prior. And so prior to this February and March, if we look back like a year, we see Saturn, who is moving over their ninth house, but And that's publishing things you're mass communicating, things you have mass communicated or published in the past, right? So Saturn's coming in, being more of a critical eye. This is a night chart. Tyra was born after the sun had set. And so then, and I should have said too, I believe the Rodden rating is pretty good on this one. So I feel pretty confident. We got an ascendant in the middle of the sign, but night chart. So Saturn's not a friend. Saturn's not what we would choose for a transit. And moving over her material wealth, material health, a lot of fortune indicator here. And so some kind of decrease, loss, obstacle, delay, something not necessarily favorable happening to the material existence for Tyra over the last year. And then now we're seeing, okay, Saturn on the midheaven, Saturn in their 10th, putting an end to some of these things, decrease and loss, diminishment of reputation in the 10th. And Saturn, is the one of consequences, accountability, what happens after there's a mistake that's made. And the reason why usually I like try to be so gentle with like even celebrity charts because they're real people, but I'm kind of being a little spicy on this one just for the reason. Now this is my own personal stuff coming in. So if you feel differently, I'm sorry. But it's funny because like Tyra Banks sat there for like the whole documentary in like their weird trench coat. Cool, that's a choice too. Like just sitting there, basically letting them show all the evidence of all of the things that she had been up to over all those seasons and all the messed up stuff that happened. And so many times she really didn't respond to it. Like she admitted she didn't deny it. She's like, "Yep, that happened. Yep, that happened. Yeah, wish that wouldn't have happened. Wish that wouldn't have happened." But like there was no accountability. And then at the end she's like, "Oh, I hope everyone watching this, your time for accountability will come as well. And this was my time for accountability." And I'm like, "You know what? You didn't even be accountable though. You just sat in front of a video camera and tried to like not lie, and you didn't really take ownership. You didn't say, I wish I would have done this differently, and here's how I would do it differently now. Not just, oh, it was a different time. It was a different time. Like there was zero accountability, fake accountability. And that felt so Saturn and Neptune. So anyway, good luck, Tyra. Very curious to see what happens to them. But interesting to see what Saturn's going to be doing up here in their 10th. And final note, this is the Saturn square. And these tend to be times in life when what got you here is not going to get you there. You have to make some adjustment, change, some real deep structural change in order to keep this cycle going. So that's an interesting time for Tyra. Zero accountability, but Saturn's trying. Saturn's trying. Okay, so that was my first story. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about a reality TV person, which is so funny for me personally, because besides the America's Next Top Model thing, that's a reality TV. I think that was actually the last time I watched reality TV, was probably America's Next Top Model in the early 2000s. Um, and then I became a pharmacist, and then my life was so stressful that like the thought of watching reality TV, I never could because it was just like I have enough drama with people every single day. I don't need any other people-y things in my life. However, now my life is different and my life is awesome. And I have bandwidth to watch other people be ridiculous. And so here we are. And we're going to talk about one of these Mormon housewives. Uh, and this is a rectified chart. We do not have an A rating, Rodden rating on this one. I have rectified this on vibes, which I don't recommend anyone do ever, seriously. So I'm not going to be reading too much into this one, but there's some interesting things going on. So, namely a Saturn return. And so for anyone who follows this this celebrity. This is someone who is on the reality show Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And recently they were asked to be a bachelorette on the Bachelorette show and did the whole, it sounds like they did the taping and everything. And then you can look into it. I'm not going to get into the story too much, but yeah, like some domestic abuse, domestic violence stuff from a few years ago where there were like actually police charges came out and the whole Bachelor thing got scrapped and they are canceling the season, which is insane. So this was the other thing that happened over the course of the eclipses. Again, I don't know what this person's rising sign is exactly, so this is kind of guessing, but eclipses happened, and uh, we noticed that this big change in plans happened for Taylor. Another thing that's been going on, regardless of rising sign, is a Saturn return that really pretty much just finished up. And so the last few years of the Mormon Wives TV show has probably been their Saturn return. And it's coming to a close now, but yeah, it'll be interesting going forward to see what happens with this the rest of the Saturn cycle after what happened during the Saturn return, which was that whole reality TV show and her really coming into prominence. Um, I can't help but think this is her chart, though. If you know, you know. People can comment if you want, but um, yeah, it's tough out there. It's tough out there, and it's gonna be tough out there for people, especially if you are someone who has a night chart or something, and planets in Aries. So good luck to her. But those are the two big celebrity things I saw go down over the eclipses, and there was a bunch of other stuff too. I'm not gonna we lost a lot of people, of course, that happens during eclipses. Famous people passing away, people of notable nature passing away. So that was no different this last set of eclipses. Uh, People being exposed. Yep, that happens. We also had a Mercury retrograde. That's our other piece of old business. Uh, this time, I love Mercury retrogrades so much. I hate them and I love them because I always find technological stuff that I didn't really know about before. And always, if I find out a new technological thing during a Mercury retrograde, chances are it's been in front of me the entire time. So I've mentioned a few things in the past. Finding that button on my trunk of my car, finding the little secret compartment in the incense box. And this last time, I found a new drop-down menu where I make my discount codes. So I have to do less math. I don't have to do percentages anymore in my brain and with my calculator. So that was my Mercury retrograde discovery this time. Did any of you have any Mercury retrograde discoveries? It was between, I should remember it. It ended on March 20th. When did it start? It started February 26th and it ended on March 20th. So that was our Mercury retrograde. The post shadow was going until about the 8th or 9th of April. So we're still, any things that came up during Mercury retrograde are probably still being sorted out a little bit. But yeah, we're coming to the end of that little story. And something that I really underestimated in March, other piece of reflection. Wow, this Mercury North Node conjunction. Woo. Increase in Mercury indeed. There was definitely, I was noticing an increase in Mercury. So many emails, so many communications, um, so many buying and selling and purchases that I didn't know were going to happen. And yeah, just a lot of like commerce, communication, lots of information flying around. And something else too with Mars, okay, so Mars is conflict, Mars is all that kind of stuff. We know that. But Mercury too, sometimes, very interestingly, I think about like debate and questioning. And we think about Mercury as like the opposite, of Sagittarius. Sagittarius affirms, it says yes, it encourages. Gemini, on the other hand, questions. They ask, they want to find more information. They don't necessarily affirm. So, Mercury, not necessarily affirmational, probably going to ask some questions, probably going to be curious. Uh, and I think they can be kind of debate a little bit of, I don't know, I guess mental, cognitive conflict, mental, cognitive competition with these two together. And then with Rahu, increasing all of it. And so another thing I've really been noticing is another kerfuffle on the astrology social medias. So many discourses. Oh, God. Oh, I had to get out my Viking meme that tells me when to pick my battles or not. Because I didn't want to get myself into trouble during this whole business. This is, yeah, I'm gonna be happy to see Mercury mosey on. That Rahu stuff is a little intense. Doesn't help that my natal moon is around there. So if this is like in your 12th, maybe you haven't been noticing it, or if it's in your fourth, maybe you're just talking to your parents a lot or rearranging your furniture. But yeah, it's been pretty busy, and I think I underestimated just how busy it would be. And I did notice too, it was a couple weeks ago, and it was when Mercury was running into this for the first time. I stumbled upon all of Dr. Ali Alomi's Decolonizing Astrology history lectures. There's three historical astrology lectures that he does on his Patreon. And I just like binged all of those. And I just went on this Dr. Alomi lecture binge for like 3 days. And it was information overload. Like my brain felt tired. I also had a bunch of forecasting readings that are my most kind of intense reading. It's like I call it my deep forecast, and I give people like a month by month breakdown. It's a report. It's not a sexy, beautiful report, but it's organized and orderly, and it's a good report. But anyway, I had like three of those in 1 week. Usually I have like one of those, and I spend like 4 hours on prepping for those readings, which is yeah, it's substantial. So my brains felt like jello, whatever that week was when Mercury, Mars, Rahu were all together. So much cognitive labor going on and busyness. And yeah, I was very intellectually tired that week. Um, I like couldn't even like I tried to watch a movie and I like couldn't even watch a movie. So I just couldn't pay attention. I can only watch Adventure Time. I can only handle 12-minute episodes. So that happened. I discovered Blue Sky has DMs. Someone DM'd me on Blue Sky. I was like, holy crap, there's DMs on here. That was my other Mercury retrograde discovery. Oh, and then finally, final old business point. Um, second to last, maybe. Mercury Mars conjunctions. Um, there's they happen, little clusters happen, and then Mars will take off and go around and leave Sun and Mercury in the dust for a while. And then they'll come back around and we'll have a bunch of Mercury Mars conjunctions again. And usually it's about three. This time it was five. And those five Mercury Mars conjunctions, they really started last October of 2024. And what I just noticed this week in the news, um, there's in America, there's been an issue with journalism. And the current political regime here, I'm calling it a regime. I'm going to be one of those people. It's a regime. They basically kicked all of our journalists out of the Pentagon, out of the main military defense kind of area where journalists usually have the right to be. They got kicked out, and that was October 15th, I believe, or mid-October of 2025. And now just this week, the courts basically said you can't do that. You can't bar all the journalists. You can't cherry pick journalists based on your favored news sources to be in certain places. So that just came out this week. And so I'm kind of now overlaying this story of basically a threat to free journalism in America really coinciding this drama coinciding with these five Mercury Mars conjunctions. So we're pretty much done with them. I think there's a couple left, right? Just one left? Yeah, that's right. This will be the last one then. April 20th is the last of those five. Yeah, and then we won't have another one for a couple year and a half. So let's see what happens with the journalism in America between now and like the end of April. Let's see what that last Mercury Mars conjunction is about in Aries in terms of that story. I'm sure it's about many other stories, but I think I clocked that one. And final point. This is actually a good segue into the month ahead. Mars just got into their last part of Pisces, where they have a lot of extra strength. So if we bring up the subdivisions of the zodiac, we can see that Mars is now in their bound, in their term, and Mars is also in their decan. Mars likes to be in a water sign. And so Mars is actually pretty darn strong right here. So even though we don't normally think of Mars as, or we don't normally think of Pisces as a fighting place, as a place for conflict or confrontation or advocacy or all of these more martial things, actually Pisces really is because Mars has so much dignity in here. So more spicy than we would think. That's the main point. Mars is going to be a little bit spicier than we think they might be in a Jupiter ruled sign, but they're in the very Mars part of the Jupiter ruled sign. So when we put Jupiter together with Mars, you can come up with a lot of really cool things, having that motivation, that energy being put toward a purpose with Jupiter, having making decisions based on like a wider picture of Jupiter. So can come in a number of cool ways, but can get pretty bombastic, can also get, yeah, just a little bit maybe haughty or arrogant in the confidence department. There's kind of this almost like, I want that. Like Mars has this function of taking sometimes, and Jupiter says yes. So you can put that together. Now that's, the worst case scenario is when people are using uh, Jupiter to like affirm and give them confidence to do shitty things. But I don't think that's what this is going to be mostly. I think this is going to be maybe feeling energized toward a purpose, feeling motivated or energized to make a decision based on what we believe or act on something that we believe to be true, acting or having motivation based on goodwill. Jupiter, goodwill, forgiveness, acceptance, making actions in that way. And we can also look at this part of Pisces as the third decan. And Austin Coppock talks a bit about devotion with this part of the wheel. So I'm going to read what notes I have from him for this decan that I got from the workshop that I went to the other year. Okay. He gives his names for the decans, and the name that Austin Coppock gives this third decan of Pisces is called a bowl of blood. And he mentions that in all religions there are sacrifice, there's sacrificing what's meaningful, giving your whole heart to something, giving it your all, meaningful sacrifice, figuring out what you will give everything for or what you would give everything to. He mentions all for the love of Beatrice, who was the patron saint of useless pursuits. Amazingly heroic, but it can go terribly right or terribly wrong. So, like his example of, oh my God, I gave everything to the wrong person or the wrong job, versus I gave everything to the right person or the right situation or the right cause. So, that Mars action to what he puts that on a mythic level. So there's also notes about devotion in terms of, think about what devotion is about. When you're really devoted to something, you do tend to have to sacrifice something that you're devoted to, at least at some point in the journey. And I also love the way that Bhikkhu Bodhi talks about devotion, which really reminded me. I'm gonna put this link down here, and I think I might go on this deck and rant a little bit more even at my next office hour. But there's a link to Bhikkhu Bodhi talking about devotion, and he mentions having to cut away other choices. How martial. You have to really decide. And deciding is also very martial. So cutting away other options and choosing to believe really and to go for that. So whatever you're believing in. So I could say more. I'm gonna not for now, but that's what Mars is up to in this last part of Pisces, and they're gonna be there until what is it? Yeah, April 9th, April 10th, April 9th. So enjoy, do what you will with that. And let's check in on this chat, and then we'll get into the actual details of the month. Hello, Delaware. Happy Saturday. Someone else is having a lot of emails. They're sorting. Yes, that's great. Very Mercury. Someone had a Mercury retrograde discovery, uh, learning a force restart on their iPhone frees up some system data. Yeah, which is necessary. I used to do this dance before I finally cleaned off my phone. Oh my God, there were so many years where I had to like do this dance of storage and trying to back up my phone, and it was just always the thing. So good, that was your Mercury retrograde discovery. That's great. Oh no, someone's having a bad time with the Venus. Yeah, I mean Venus. They have not been doing super well. And yeah, if you're Scorpio rising, that means that, Venus is the Lord of your seventh house too. So that's just doubling up on the relational quality of whatever Venus is up to. Um, oh, and this will actually be relevant. So they had mentioned bait and switch friendships. Uh, yeah, friendships that kind of started and then didn't turn out. That sounds very Aries indeed, especially when we're talking, and we're actually going to talk about the third decan of Aries in a little bit. That one we're having I think it's a new moon. Yeah, new moon in Aries, and especially the last part of Aries, known for being able to make quick friendships or relationships that burn brightly for a very short amount of time, and then they're not there for a long time though. So yeah, Aries, not our best for cultivating long-term partnerships or long-term friendships. Taurus, you think about the slow, consistent, plotting cultivation of relationship that happens. What is it? You got to like meet with someone 7 or 8 times or something before you start to feel like they're a friend. That's that slow Taurian continuing to show up. And yeah, Aries is not as conducive to that. So I'm sorry to hear that's been your time. I hope it improves now. I mean, remember that caveat about the first couple days of Venus and Taurus? Still afflicted by Pluto, but then they're going to move on, and I think we'll really be able to lean in and have a nice time with Venus and Taurus instead. So hang in there for that. Someone has a Mercury in Aries, so you're about to get a bunch of a bunch of transits over your natal planet. All right. Yeah, Delaware Tom, you're gonna have a lot to watch in April then, if you've got that many planets in Aries. And if you have planets in Aries, any of the cardinal signs, Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, if you have planets or really important points in any of those cardinal signs, then the April weather might be poking at you a little bit more than other people, or in maybe a nicer way. You have a front row seat for all that stuff. You're gonna notice it probably. Yeah. All right. Great comments. Thank you, everyone. Good to hear from all of you. I love when people come and hang out. Let's talk about April. Um, April. Okay, I'm going really slow today. I'm sorry, y'all. We're going at a slow pace today. We're 45 minutes in. I'm just getting started. So, a couple other general things, but now about April. Mercury, Jupiter trines. We have had a few of them, and we're going to have one more. So, we've got our Lord, our planet of small little things, meeting up nicely with our planet of wide or bigger things. So there's an ability to have a nice, cohesive, wide view of something that's going on and be able to manage a lot of little details that fit into that and make sense. Um, it'd be like, you're rushing around doing 10,000 different little tasks, and it might feel kind of chaotic. And Jupiter in contact with this, ruling over with Mercury as well, very much saying it's all for a certain purpose, or it's, a lot of 10,000 things, but they're all coming together for something. We're going to have our last one of those on the 3rd. So the first one was February 16th, the second one was March 9th, and the last one is April 3rd. Very nice. Good too for commerce, communication, travel. I mean, in general, Mercury is not doing well for any of those things. So I would advise a lot of caution with this statement. But in terms of that really not good wider weather pattern for Mercury that's happening right now with Mars and North Node in Pisces, um, even though that's the case, there might be a little tiny window on the 3rd. Maybe there's something like if you need to make a purchase, maybe the 3rd of April is a less bad date, you know? Yeah, we're gonna go with that. And then we have all of the stuff happening in Aries. So the big thing about this month is going to be the Mars Saturn conjunction, obviously. But I want us to watch Mercury here. So these are, I'm just going to give you kind of my middle of the month highest threat level assessed days. These are the days that I am the most skeptical of in April because of what Mercury is doing and all the Aries stuff. So in terms of doing things really important, or especially beginning or starting something that's really important, I don't care if it's an art project, a work project, a new relationship, getting a haircut, whatever, might not be the best time when Mercury is moving through Neptune and then Mars and then Saturn and also getting in under the beams of the sun. So they're going to be going through a bit of an obstacle course here. And so especially from April 13th through to April 23rd or April 24th. So April 13th to April 23rd-ish. April 13th to April 23rd-ish. Mercury is going to be moving through a lot. So this is where I want you to be careful with communication. There could be confusion, delays, and name anything that could happen with communications that could be misunderstood. That's all a possibility, especially earlier, like April 12th, 13th, 14th, as Mercury is moving into Neptune. That's a recipe for confusion, misunderstanding. And then they get with Mars, spicy, separations, conflicts, Saturn, delays, barriers, obstacles. You can start to paint a picture here. There's confusion that leads to some kind of action needing to be taken or decision being made, or at worst, a conflict because of miscommunication or misunderstanding. And then Saturn being some consequence of that very shortly after. So these 10 days, you will notice on my booking calendar, I really took off a lot of time because I don't want to be counseling people during any of this, really. And I thought about shutting down my whole website just so that people can't even schedule with me during this time. So I'm just going to put out a PSA and just hope everybody hears it somehow magically. Do not book anything with me, please, between, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm like the worst business person ever, but this is how much I just don't. want to use this sky to help people. Uh, it's not helpful. It'd be like, oh, help me learn how to do squats. And then I pick a time to help you to learn how to do squats out on some ice in the parking lot in a snowstorm. That's not when you learn how to do squats, you know? So likewise, there's certain times that I don't really feel like doing astrology. And that is going to be particularly like April 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Yeah. Book now or like maybe wait a week to book if you can. But yeah, also not going to be counseling people during those days if I can avoid it. I've got a couple windows of time, but I'm being really careful with it. And, it's funny because I'm being all skeptical about it. And I've been keeping those days for work, as low as I can. And it turns out I got to get a bunch of trees cut down right outside of my office. And it's going to happen in the next couple weeks. So I'm gonna have a bunch of chainsaws out here. I'm gonna be doing like some cleanup in the back. I got a clear brush, and we're getting a new fence between the neighbor and our place that we're renting, but I am still responsible somewhat for coordinating or being here for a little bit of it. And so it's funny because I was seeing this thing come down the line that for me in my birth chart and why I'm like this is because it literally all my Aries and Mars stuff has to do with my third house of communication and divination. Don't and it rules my career. Mars rules my career. So and Mercury is in charge of my collaboration. So there's specific reasons why I don't want to do these specific things. For you, it might be an entirely different set of life topics where maybe you want to advise caution. So say if you're a Leo rising, if you're a Leo rising, maybe April 13th to April 23rd, not the best time to publish your hottest take on social media. If you are a Cancer rising, if you're Cancer rising, April 13th through April 23rd, maybe not the best time to do a spicy thing in public that could ruin your reputation or to have a public outburst or anything like that. So, um, arguing in public, I know people think it can't happen to them, but it does. So there's, gonna be different areas of life. I have pinpointed the ones where I need to be careful around. And it just so happens that communication and career and then the thing that ended up showing up as the thing that I was concerned about are chainsaws and a new fence. And it's going to be really hard to, you know, talk in a microphone and not have that sound interrupt my sessions. So it's like this is such a good example of I can predict the fuzzy outline of what's coming. I would have never been able to predict like 2 years ago before I had the context that it was going to be a trees and a fence situation with the neighbor in my third house. That's going to be very loud. So, in any event, that's how astrology works. And that's why my schedule is weird. And it's because of all of this Aries stuff. And then, let's see, Mercury Mars conjunction. That's on the 20th. I think that is it. That was my main note. It's just that parade. It's that Mercury parade through all the Aries stuff. That's what I was peeking at mostly this month. So bob and weave around that as best you can. I know those are a lot of days, but do your best. And sometimes things just get busy. Sometimes when Mars is involved, uh, especially Mercury Mars, it can be just really busy, just lots of actions. So then at the very least, set yourself up for success in the first part of April. Um, do your laundry, meal prep, stuff like that. Do your best so that when things do get busy mid-month, you've already done your laundry, you know? So that's the practical advice. And now I think I'm finally ready to get into the forecast for April proper. Right. So the 1st of April, we enter the month with a little bit of a crunchy moon. We got a lunar malefic enclosure, and that is going to be from about 8:20 a.m. Central Time on April 1st until about 8:30 a.m. Wait, no, that's not right. Sorry, it's the day before. It starts at 8:20 a.m. Central Time on March 31st. And that malefic lunar enclosure goes all the way to April 1st, the next day at 8:30 in the morning. No April Fool's jokes in the morning, people. Don't do the morning April Fool's joke. Do it after 8:30 Central Time a.m. Uh, that's about 1:30 p.m. on April 1st, Universal Time. That's when you're done with the malefic enclosure. And if you are more globally east, I sometimes I just pick a random country to see what the time zone will show for a more globally eastern time zone. And in the Philippines, that's like 9:20 p.m. On the first, would that be right? Yeah, 9:20 p.m. on the 1st of April until 9:30 the next day. So 9:30 p.m. the next day. Malefic lunar enclosures, they can be times where you're doing hard things that you need to do, you're intentionally doing something that is not comfortable. I've gotten like medical things that I've done during malefic lunar enclosures because they're not comfortable. So it doesn't have to be anything bad, but it's just kind of like, yep, that's going to be the vibes and the quality of time. It's not warm and fuzzy. And if you need to do something on the first, like have a meeting or something like that, not a good time to do it right early in the morning right away. Do your meetings on the first later in the day, in the afternoon, after this gets done. Um, then we have a full moon. So we've got our first lunation of the month. We've got on the second decan of Libra, a full moon at 12 degrees. We've got Venus, who cannot see the moon by a traditional aspect, but because of homozonia, meaning that Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, there's a minor sympathy here where Venus can kind of talk to the moon. The moon can kind of talk to Venus and get some guidance from them. And so that helps to stabilize this full moon, make it have outcomes that are going to turn out a little bit better. Moon is not moving into any malefics at this point. They've already had their engagement with Saturn, and they won't be speaking with Mars until a little bit later. So not a bad full moon. Doesn't look too crunchy. Of course, full moons are usually a little bit more active and busy. And that's going to perfect at 9:11 p.m. Central Time on the 1st. The thing about this, though, is that this is happening when Venus is applying to Pluto. So they have not gotten past the square yet. And so I kind of do think that there might be a kind of intense maybe quality to this one, or maybe a little bit more pressurized. Could just be doing something really important that's important to you that you want to turn out well again, where that moon in its fullness is sharing everything that it's been up to for the last 2 weeks or for the last 6 months, perhaps. But it's getting ready, it's excited and ready to share all of that energy. And the Pluto Venus square might dial up, amplify some of the energy of that full moon. Also T square, oh yeah, Jupiter. A nice little T square with Jupiter. So that can help stabilize and support. I don't hate that. That's fine. Something beginning potentially, or something that's begun, but the pace really like picks up at this point. There's so much cardinal energy. So whatever's going on, if you've already started stuff, I would imagine by April it's picking up speed. And then finally, Austin Coppock talks about this decan, the second decan of Libra, as it's a Saturn place. Saturn is exalted here. And it is the essence of laws and rules. There are links of a chain, people bound together by contract or trust. knowing that violations of these rules could be a betrayal, very Three of Swords energy. So we maybe are going to have a full moon that could be about something relational, about an agreement, something that you're working on that, or anything that's going on that has this air of duty or obligation to it. So that could be part of this full moon. And then, did I just say eclipse earlier? If I did, I meant full moon. And then also Austin Coppock brings up the different types of time. So there's like our normal, we think of time in its linear fashion. Now it's 2 p.m. In a little while, it's going to be 4 p.m. That type of time, yesterday was the 27th, today's the 28th. That's Chronos time versus Kairos time is much more about the quality of the moment and timing and picking the right time. If anything's not sounding familiar there, it's astrology. We're playing with Kairos time, seizing the moment and finding the right time because we know it might not come around again. So Austin Coppock also talked about this part of Libra as the timeliness of things, or having this nature of making decisions or doing things based on the best time to do it, not on the linear expectations of, oh, you need this on my desk by end of day Friday. It's like, you know what? That's not how this works all the time. So, if there's something going on with anything that's fruiting or peaking or culminating that you've been working on, and part of its sharing or its presentation has to do with that we're going to share it in the correct timing, that could be what's going on with this full moon as well. So I know that's all pretty cryptic, but that's what I got. So good luck, everyone. And I think I forgot to do my next aspect, which is actually looking to be Jupiter. Heck yeah, it's Jupiter. So the next aspect the moon makes is with Jupiter. So that really helps to give this full moon, even if it's kind of intense with the Venus-Pluto thing, a little bit more stability. And it's speaking more to an outcome that is being affirmed, an outcome that is being supported with the moon applying into Jupiter. Jupiter's saying, yes, moon, whatever you're doing, yeah. So I like that. That's nice. And after the full moon, or around the full moon, this is about first week of April. We're going to be able to see Mercury pretty good. They're going to be in the morning sky, and they'll be as far away by degree, kind of in the longitudinal way, away from the sun, so they'll be more easy to see. And that's going to be about 6 a.m. in the morning, right before sunrise. So go outside if you can get your buns out of bed that early. I'm not going to make any promises. But if you're up at that hour, go check out, see if you can see Mercury in the morning sky before the sun rises. And when symbolically, whenever a planet is direct, fast, visible, they are doing all of their jobs the best that they can do. And so I would imagine if there has been any information you've been waiting for, or any buying and selling or communications that need to be done, they're maybe more likely to happen maybe this first week of April, with Mercury just being so visible and doing its thing. And then on the 3rd as well, Mercury very visible, also having that trine, that final trine with Jupiter on the 3rd. So again, not a great time in general for communication, commerce, travel, but the 3rd might be an interesting little window where those things go maybe a little better. And then we have a lunar benefic enclosure from on the 3rd of April, 5:26 p.m. Central Time until April 4th at 2:42 p.m. Central Time. There's a little catch with this one though, because of course Venus is still with Pluto. So even though the moon is going to be hugged between some of these rays of Jupiter and Venus, and Scorpio moon is hopefully going to be able to have a little better of a time than they usually have in Scorpio, there's still, yeah, Venus, Pluto, this square becomes exact at the same time. So it perfects at 5:38 p.m. So the benefic enclosure starts at 5:26 p.m. and then about 10 minutes later, Venus and Pluto square perfects. Venus-Pluto square is not, that's a very different quality than a benefic enclosure. So this benefic enclosure has a big caveat on it. The main thing that I wondered about this is because usually it's like things are either going more easily during a lunar benefic enclosure, or it's like if things are really difficult, they go better than they might have otherwise. It's like a little bit of a safety net. And so if the Venus-Pluto square is doing some things we do not like, perhaps the lunar benefic enclosure will soften it, make it not as bad as it could be. So maybe in that way, it's kind of a mitigation for the Venus-Pluto square. Or it could make things intensely good, but that could be weird. I don't know. We'll find out. But not a simple lunar benefic enclosure on the 3rd and the 4th of April. But there is one. And then I'm gonna fast forward a few days. Moon's gonna make it through Scorpio. It's gonna go through Sag. And then on the 8th, we really get the Mars-Neptune adherence starting. So this is great for inspired action, all that stuff I was talking about in terms of devotion and cutting away the other choices so you can totally follow a thing that you believe. Excuse me. Mars is even more inspired now that they're going to be running into Neptune. They're going to be even more kind of having that, um, I mean, almost potentially delusions of grandeur. So watch out for delusions of grandeur. But other than that, could be really helpful if you got something where you need to have that inspirational lift to get it done. That could be good for that. Could be good for certain types of art or creative movement. If you have any movement practices that are flowy or pretty, this could be really nice for that. Uh, yeah, there's so many movement practices that are flowy and pretty. And then we also have potential confused actions. Hold on a sec, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm okay. I just had to cough for a second. Um, Confused actions, confused motivations, not sure what order of operations to do this thing. So that could also be Mars and Neptune. That really heats up on April 8th, and that completes uh, April 13th. So April 8th to April 13th, great for movement art, great for inspired action. Make sure that before you take actions, that you have all your facts straight, that you're kind of your intended target is the correct target for whatever you're doing between the 8th and the 13th. Okay, and then by this time as well, we get Mercury out of their post-retrograde shadow. So now Mercury, who in February stationed at 22 degrees of Pisces, they went all the way back to I think about 8. And then they traced over all of those degrees again. And now they're back to where they started. And so they've retraced all those other steps from before. And that wraps up around the 8th. So any of those Mercury retrograde stories that are still lingering, they should be wrapping up by then. We have a short, no, it's not short, it's about a day, a lunar malefic enclosure. So again, on the 8th, maybe doing some hard things, doing things that you need to do that might not be the most comfortable or desirable. Uh, Also, if you want things to go well, this is not the time maybe to have the easiest time having it go well. And that is on April 8th from 4:51 a.m. Central Time to 8:16 p.m. Central Time. And the 8th is a Wednesday. So that Wednesday, I advise caution with doing important stuff. And if it's important stuff that you know is going to be kind of a slog, then yeah, go for it. If you know it's something that's like you got to grind through it, perfect weather for that. But if you want to, like, I don't know, make a cake for a baby's birthday and have it look like the picture, it might be kind of like maybe not the funnest cooking experience. So I'll have to say, do your best. On the 8th, Mercury out of their shadow. Mars then enters Aries on the 9th. And they're going to be so strong. So they've been strong at the end of Pisces, and then they're going to continue to be even more strong in Aries. And so here we might be feeling April 9th, really onward for the rest of Mars's time in Aries. Oh, when are they getting out of there? Taurus. May 18th. That's how long they're in there. Yeah. So enjoy very vigorous Mars for like 6 weeks. Uh, don't overdo it, depending on your constitution. Sometimes Mars and Aries, they'll just they'll just go. They'll just keep doing it, doing whatever they're doing, regardless of if they're tired or not. So could be a potential for burnout here with Neptune around. It might be harder for Mars to understand when they might need to take a break or rest. So make sure that you're not kind of forgetting that with Neptune around, hydrate, etc. Very very initiative. I wish I could bottle up Aries people and how they like some Aries folks, they can just be like, they think about doing a thing and then they get off the couch and they just do it. And that blows my mind. As a Pisces moon, I will think about a thing and I will not get up and do it. So I will do it eventually, but I'm not quick. But there's something so refreshing about people who can just be like, yeah, let's just get it done. I'm like, okay, let's just get it done. So that's the vibe. It's fast. It's very fast. So the pace picking up even more. This motivation's fast. Conflict fast. Actions fast. It takes about 15 minutes for adrenaline to start to break down in the human body. So if there's conflict, if anyone's feeling spicy or really worked up, and you're noticing that, take 15 to 20 minutes to get that Mars energy to kind of chill out. So that might be a helpful thing over the next 6 weeks, April into May. Pick your battles energy, I guess, at least till they're past Saturn. And so this first part, Mars, we may not be able to get to enjoy the full Mars and Aries experience, I think, until Mars gets past Saturn. Because, like, if Mars is our actions, they're running into a wall, they're running into some um, maybe standard or do not pass go, do not collect $200 until you have done XYZ, delays, maybe necessary criticisms. It can be all kinds of stuff. So Mars is running into that. So it's not clear, just running from point A to point B with Mars as they're running into Saturn. They get past Saturn. Let's see, it looks like by about the 21st. I like to have a couple degrees between them. That's nice. But yeah, the 20th, the 21st, they're going to have that conjunction and then start separating. And then Mars is going to be much more free after that. So, like the end of April, then our actions, what Mars is trying to do, is going to be much less impeded, fewer delays, fewer obstacles, fewer barriers, etc. So just know that this, both Mercury and Mars having to go through that planet of confusion and then that planet of some kind of difficulty of some sort sometimes. Yeah. Or another version of this. So let's say Mars gets really inspired. Mars is like, I'm going to save the whales. I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump in a boat and we're going to go save the whales. And then Mars runs into Saturn, and Saturn says, do you understand boats? Do you know what it takes to save the whales? So then Mars is getting, all the, okay, here's what you have to, here's the obligations, the duties, the commitments, the hard work, the discipline that is required for XYZ. So Mars is having that whole discussion, and that again doesn't wrap up until like the 21st, 22nd. Okay. So that's going on. I'm going to talk more about that Mars Saturn conjunction in a second when we get to the 20th, but I'm going to circle back around to that uh, on the 10th. We have a lunar malefic enclosure from April 10th, 8:50 p.m. Central Time until April 11th at 8:15 a.m. Central Time. Mid-month is also about when Saturn gets out of the beams. Uh, at this point, they're going to be 15 degrees away from the sun. The sun is moving away from Saturn. That was a funny arrow. Sun is moving away from Saturn. And so now Saturn will start to be visible in the morning sky before the sun rises, similar to what I was just saying with Mercury, um, and Mars, who also should have been there. Now we're gonna be able to start to see Saturn as well. So after that rebirth, we had that Saturn Cazimi not too long ago, sometime last week. And then more in the middle of April, whatever was reset, whatever rebirths happened with your Saturn house topics, now we'll be able to see a little bit more clearly in April what that was about. What was seeded, what was reborn, and what is it going to look like now? Um, let's see. Yeah, I'll do a little example. So for like this theoretical Leo rising, your seventh house and sixth house Lord, Saturn, they just had their rebirth. So these topics just went through a bit of a reset button. And so partnerships and sixth house, maybe health or labor. It could be that maybe something new, a beginning emerging in mid-March with partners, with labor, pets, or health. Maybe you and your partner get a dog. Maybe you and your partner start doing walks in the morning, and that's what was reborn. That's what restarts. And now in April, this Saturn is going to become visible, and we'll be able to see much more clearly. Okay, how are we doing? If it's the partner who just got the dog, then we're seeing much more clearly. Okay, this is how our lives are affected by having a dog now. So we'll be able to see when planets are invisible, there's like behind the scenes things happening. When we cannot see a planet, it's like it's like a almost like a pregnancy. It's like there's a person growing, but you can't see him yet. And then when that planet becomes visible, now we can see what's going on there in those topics of life. Very one-to-one kind of symbolism there. Saturn's out of the beams. And then on the 13th, we have a Venus-Jupiter sextile. So this is where I force myself to say something nice for the month. But I kind of like when the moon is, oh yeah, that's nice. Uh, April 13th. I kind of dig it. I'll just ignore that and I'll just pretend like that's not there. So Jupiter, Venus together. This is when like we can have a good time with relationships. If you have conversations to have, they might go better. These are like affirming connections, affirming supportive relationships, learning things, understanding goodwill, forgiveness with relationships. There could also be inspiration around that or a sense of confidence or optimism. If you have any art projects cooking or any creative works you're bringing into the world, this could be Jupiter helping out with any of that creative stuff that you're doing. When it comes to justice, fairness, integrity, spiritual kind of notions around character, this could be those things coming together. Maybe um, yeah, it could be like if you're on that path, if you're aspirationally working towards some kind of good character, this is a good time for that. Maybe you come upon a reading that is really insightful, or this would be like me finding a really cool Sutta from Buddhism or something that is really awesome for me. So not a bad time. April 13th, the moon plugs in with it real nice. And then uh that's the Mars conjunct Neptune that day, exactly, pretty much on the 13th. And then Sun Chiron starts to heat up a little bit too. And Chiron can be those ouchy things, wounds, the wounded healer, all that, but they can also be healing and or tools for healing. Um, they can be both of those things. On the 14th, Mercury is going to enter Aries. They are moving so fast. Yeah, a very late day on April 14th, early on the 15th, depending on your time zone. Mercury is moving into Aries, and then they'll be in direct contact with Neptune. So, again, very great for creative writing, spiritual work, symbolic language, um, doing anything with writing, communicating, understanding that is more spiritual or creative. Um, but be careful with material world things, again, like buying, selling, doing forms, anything where there's like nuts and bolts that have to be precise. And especially watch out for going too fast. A lot of confusion with Neptune, I think. Part of what the confusion may be about is just because things are moving too fast or because they're brand new. So, what I've been learning about Neptune confusion over the last year is that a lot of times confusion happens when people do new things, when people go out of their comfort zone. Never done that before. Of course, I'm confused. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it before. So, some confusion, intentional, normal, natural, should probably be there if your brain's working correctly. Uh, yeah, there should be confusion at some point if you're learning. And then we get into Aries, and Aries itself is this place of initiations and doing things for the first time and being the first one to do it. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of confusion for Mercury to go through, but in some contexts, it's going to be perfectly normal and fine. I have a feeling this is for me going to be trying to communicate with people when there's chainsaws around. So that could be a thing temporarily if I'm, trying to bob and weave around that. Um, and P.S., I will just go to a different room. It'll be fine, but I might not be able to be in here. Uh, so there's that. And it could be a good time for me to maybe come up with some creative ideas. But I think another thing it's going to be is I think I am being asked to create a lecture for an event, uh, a local one in Madison, where I might have to present on astrology. And I've never done that before, like in that context. I've done presentations in person. Used to do it when I was a pharmacist quite a lot, actually. Um, which you think I wouldn't be so stage frighty given how much I've done this, but it never stops. But it's been years. It's been years since I had to do this in person. So I think I'm going to be having some confusion as well in terms of navigating that. I digress. April 14th into the 15th, Mercury's entering Aries. The Mercury Neptune thing perfects on the 16th, and then by the 17th, 18th, that chills out. We have a benefic enclosure on the 14th from 10:22 a.m. Central Time until 1:10 p.m. Central Time. That's a nicer little time. And yeah, that's when the moon, I had mentioned the moon is going to be plugging in with Venus and Jupiter. That little benefic enclosure, that is going to be a Pisces moon that's between a sextile with, or sorry, a trine with Jupiter and a sextile with Venus. And that's going to be a nicer time to do things, maybe more easeful time to do things on the 14th between 10:22 a.m. Central Time and 1:10 p.m. on Central Time. So late morning, early afternoon. Good time to good lunchtime. Get lunch before 1:10 p.m. Central Time. It might be yummier if you get it before 1:10 p.m. I'm going to check on the chat and then I'm going to talk about the Saturn Mars business. Thanks, Tom. Sounds good. Yeah. Uh, all right. Oh, yeah, hit the like button if you're enjoying this. Hit subscribe if you would like to continue to follow my work. Malefic conjunction time. Okay, so we gotta go to basics here for a second because I thought we were over the whole malefic, benefic, getting hung up on these words thing, but I don't think we are. Uh, Malefic sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it just means intense. Like Mars is really hot and Saturn is really cold, versus Venus and Jupiter, they were said to be more warm, temperate, like reasonable amounts of heat and cold that allow life to flourish without having these more extreme circumstances. Not good or bad. Deserts still have life in them. You know, there's times when oh, Joe, maker of ways, uh, Joe O'Neill, who is a different astrologer, very brilliant astrologer. I love the metaphor that they made once of cleaning something with really hot water. Such a Mars function. You know, I love cleaning stuff with really hot water. It works so well and I don't have to use chemicals. Woo! Um, so yeah. And again, not necessarily good or bad. So that's one thing that Saturn and Mars can be about versus just going immediately to all the worst things you can possibly think of. And then the other thing we can think of with Saturn and Mars is we can ignore for a minute all of their symbolism as planets. Just ignore it, pretend like they're just blank slates that represent house topics. So for this theoretical Sagittarius rising, Mars is their fifth house and their 12th, and Saturn is their second and their third house lord. And so what this conjunction is going to be doing, this conjunction happens once every 2 years. So this is not rare. We have one once every 2 years. The last time we had one of these was in Pisces. So they kind of go around by sign. And so it's going to really affect different areas of our life. And yet Saturn and Mars are, for each of us, are lords of certain life topics. And those topics are going to be squished together and reset for another 2 year cycle of squishing those topics together. So for this Sagittarius rising, we would see maybe topics of the money, communication, children, maybe mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. It could be about romance. Maybe someone's making an appointment and investing in some therapy for their romantic life. That could be what this is. That would be constructive. Maybe someone is a creative writer. Maybe third house writing. Second house is your time, energy, skills, talents. It's much more than just your money. Fifth house, creative expression. 12th house, behind the scenes work, spirituality, large animals. Maybe they're writing about horses. Maybe they're writing about spirituality. And it's this restarting of a 2 year cycle of that kind of stuff that they do with those topics in their chart. So there's a lot of ways where if you're worried about this one, um, you can just ignore all that's like the kind of more, I don't know, loaded language that comes up when we describe difficult things in life and ignore all that and just go by the houses. So that's one way to approach this and to think about it in a bunch of different ways. And if I'm being real, planets have to describe everything in life. So we've got planets that describe favorable, neutral, unfavorable things. We also know that there's all these shades of gray and spectrum in between where even planets like Jupiter and Venus can be a problem sometimes in a chart, a functional malefic, if you will, representing things that are undesirable or, you know, unfavorable. And oddly, sometimes Mars and Saturn can act as a functional benefic, where they're creating more stability somehow in the life. They're helping out, they're more constructive. So there's a lot of nuance in here. That's why I would not, again, just go to like the most difficult type of thing for this. And if I'm going to do that though, so let's talk about what would be the difficult version of this. I'm going to use myself as an example. So I'm an Aquarius rising. Uh, this is not when I'm going to be texting and driving. This is not when I'm going to be multitasking and walking across a busy street and like looking at my phone. So this is in my third house of mobility, short distance travel, driving, my neighborhoods. If I see someone, you know, who's in my familiar space who's crabby or being rude, yeah, that could happen. Someone who's hot and bothered and not feeling good in my vicinity, that's a possibility. But I was thinking about all the possibilities of what could happen here that would be di difficult, to be heedful, not to worry and like ruminate and like in a weird indulgent way, just like languish and all the bad things that could happen. That's not what I'm saying. We try to be heedful. I try to use my creative brain to think about what this could be in order to avoid problems, avoid challenges. So if I know there's some planets that can describe potentially difficult things sometimes in a place, I'm going to be really careful with all of those topics during that time, especially around April 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd. This perfects on the 20th, 19th, 20th. Let me get it exactly. April 19th at 5:43 p.m. Central Time. It will be exact. Mercury's also there, pretty much at the same time. So I also will not be saying things that are spicy that could get me into unnecessary quarrels. I am not going to be keyboard warring online with this in my third house of communities and communication. I am going to try to be really gentle and careful with my speech during this time. So look at where Aries is in your chart. If it's in your second house, be careful with your money. If it's in your fourth house, be careful around your home. Um, yeah. And practically speaking, I think so much stuff gets avoided. And this is good advice without astrology at all. This is good advice all the time, no matter what. Often just slowing down, doing one thing at a time, being very present and aware with what you're doing will prevent so much bullshit in your life. So much bullshit gets prevented from very simply slowing down and not multitasking. I hate it because in capitalism, like we are so pressured to just move so fast and continue at a pace that is unsustainable in life. And that's how mistakes happen. And it's interesting in pharmacy, there's studies about the error rates, the rates of error, and the most errors happen in pharmacies when it's either way too busy and ironically, when it's also really slow. Because then you're not like your attention and your focus is not actually on enough. It's like in the nice medium pace is when the fewest mistakes happen because you're kind of at attention enough, but not overextended. Um, anyway, I digress. I think that's all I had. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because I know that that was one of the more kind of concerning things for the month. I forgot to talk about the Aries moon. I gotta go back on that one, but oh yeah, and the moon pings it. So I guess maybe last thing here, um, the moon is gonna be with it on the 19th as well. No, they're not gonna be with it. They just ping it. Yeah. And that's gonna be, it's like at midnight, 11:59 p.m. Central Time on the 19th into the very first minutes of the day on April 20th. Um, that's when the moon is in a malefic enclosure. Just It's like the shortest malefic enclosure I've ever seen. It's on Astro-seek, it says 0.3 hours. It's really short. Uh, but anyway, this is like, what day is this? So this is a Sunday into a Monday. I don't know what people's lifestyles are like, but if you are out and about, if you are, especially if like you have been imbibing, partying, enjoying your life, be really careful getting home Sunday night, April 19th into early April 20th. Um, yeah, be careful getting home, take the Uber. We also have, I mentioned Mercury is right there. So this is the last of our five Mercury Mars conjunctions. So to name all of them, we had our first one. Oh yeah, it was on the 20th of October, 2025, and then the 12th of November, 2025. And then we had another one January 18th of 2026, on March 15th of 2026, and the last one April 20th. These are times to be careful with your words, times to just double check, the logistics. If you're going somewhere, make sure you're going to the right place at the right time. I would say on the 19th, 20th, leave early for things. If Mercury, a planet of travel, is running into a planet of slowness or delay, you're probably going to want to give yourself more time between meetings, give yourself more time in traffic on April 19th, 20th. Heck, even leading up to that, like April 18th. Yeah. Buying and selling, be careful with that on the 19th and 20th. And then that's that. So that's our triple conjunction. Also, it would be a fun exercise. I'm not going to do it here, but very similar to how I was mentioning how Mars and Saturn bring in all of the house topics that they rule from other parts in the chart. Mercury's also doing that. So, when we have a triple conjunction, there's just so many areas of life that can be converging and coming together into one event. So, or one day. So it'll be really, really interesting. And just know that things are going to be really busy in whatever the house topics that Aries is for you in mid-April. The 21st. Actually, before I go to the 21st, I skipped the new moon. We got to talk about the new moon. On the 17th of April. So yeah, probably could be a mind your own business day. 16th, 17th of April, given the moon is going to be with all this stuff. But check out the house topics for Aries. So again, for this theoretical Aquarius rising, this is going to be their third house of siblings, cousins, extended relatives, short distance travel, foundational learning and teaching, etc., etc. Third house stuff. There's new chapters. There's a monthly chapter closing, a monthly chapter opening. Something new showing up in these third house areas of life for an Aquarius rising. It would be in different areas of life for a different rising sign, but it is right before this conjunction of Mars and Saturn, which also feels that is another beginning of a cycle. So we've got a couple beginnings of cycles here happening in tandem. And the third decan here is where this new moon is. We've got Mars ruling over it in domicile, able to really direct exactly how they want this new moon to start, what they want this new moon to be about. Mars is able to be there and guide and direct, saying, yeah, this is what I would like to do. Here's the decisions I would like to make. We're cutting this away, et cetera, making a plan. And in the third decan, this is where it's like you've gone through the stages of pre-contemplation, planning, action, Now you're in the second decan, that action continues. It is the first parts of that action and the subsequent plan, the the planning of your work and the working of your plan and doing the thing. Something that T. Susan Chang talks about in 36 Secrets with the second decan of Aries is this entrepreneurial kind of spirit, this ability to go forth and do something maybe that you've never done before. I think they talk about Jack and the Beanstalk and this notion of them doing all of the climbing up to the heavens. That's like, yeah, we're doing what we set out to do. We're doing it. And the third decan, it's like, okay, how do we continue this? How do we carry this through? Eventually, we're going to end up in Taurus where we really root down and we really get into the consistent, continued maintenance and plotting of a thing. In the last part of Aries, we have to be having that forward thinking view. There's also, I think about the tarot correspondences and the Four of Wands. So, fours to me, it's like after that peaking of activity of the threes. And it's like, what comes next? What's the follow through on that? What comes after you had that Three of Wands? Okay, we're going, we're doing it. So there's also this notion of celebrations, things coming together. So that's part of this. This is a Venus Jupiter rule decan, depending on the systems that you use. I use Venus as a ruler of this decan. So we start to get Venus trying to do Venus things in an Aries place, trying to have connection, fun, harmony, parties, good times. But we're not set up for that. We're not set up to have a party here, you know. So Venus is trying to do that. Austin Coppock talks about this decan a little bit. They mention, what do they mention? Where are my notes? Self-assertion in a potentially benefic way is again Venus. So Mars assertion, but in a way that's more relational, diplomatic. Very like he mentioned like the example of, you know, writing a song and being excited to share that. Bold acts of self-assertion. A comedian who tells it like it is. An attempt to assert the self by benefic means. Charming, glamour bombshell to the point where it could be weaponized. Artisans, someone who works with metal to create beautiful things. Blacksmiths, martial artists. And then he also mentions that here Venus struggles to keep sustained harmonious relationships. So someone earlier was mentioning how Venus through Aries has not been a fun time relationally for them. And here we go. So the third decan of Aries, Venus here struggles to keep sustained harmonious relationships. Good at attracting and making relationships quickly, but sustaining them becomes difficult. It's cardinal, it burns quickly and brightly. There's a temporary fusion of harmony created by intense or temporary situation, say meeting someone at a rave. So perhaps what we could do with this third decan energy is think what would be cool, but in shorter bursts or a short term project, a very quick thing, intentionally. So, really intentionally not holding on to whatever that is, but knowing it might just be like a, yeah, something that you do once or in a short order. It's not meant to last forever. So here we have some new beginning in that place where there could be some beneficence here. Uh, Jupiter can see. Venus can't, but we do have one benefic helping to stabilize and support. And I also, of course, like to see that both the sun and moon have moved past all of this other stuff in early Aries. So the good news is that this new beginning really happens after all those planets have gotten through all that potentially challenging stuff in Aries. That's in the rear view mirror by the time that this new moon happens and this new start happens. And of course, Chiron is here. So maybe there's something a little tender about this. If you're starting something new and maybe it's a little scary, maybe especially if you've not done it before, you could be like, yeah, we're gonna walk through that gate. Um, so take care of yourself if there is something here in these endings or beginnings that feels a little tender or sensitive. Um, but there's also that potential to work through a wound, have a new beginning in terms of tools that can help to heal or, support challenges that they bring. Often with Chiron, we talk about this wounded healer like there's some like I get a sense of pity from so many people when they talk about Chiron. It's just like this woe is me Eeyore kind of attitude toward them. But that's why I always tell the myth in my sessions of Chiron becoming this really amazing coach, teacher, healer, mentor, archetype guy, doing all these amazing things, training Jason of Jason and the Argonauts, helping people who had, like Chiron, been othered or ostracized. So he helped everybody. Of course, he had his own probs, but absolutely brilliant and had so many tools to help others almost because of their own struggles and needing to get through that. So it's the classic kind of silver lining. Ah, yes, I had these struggles, but I'll be able to help others. Or, yes, I've had these struggles, and here's my giant bag of tools because of that that I am now very proficient with. Um, so Chiron's here. That's a flavor. Yeah, interesante. Did I have anything else written about this? I don't think so. So very, new moons, we're already about beginnings and endings, but we think about it a lot like beginnings. Aries is just doubling down on that. Good luck, be brave. Can't be brave unless you're scared. If you're scared, you're not brave. Or if you're not scared, you're not brave. Because to be brave, you gotta be scared. Uh, Venus, Uranus coming together. So Venus has been doing great in Taurus. The moon is going to be with Venus on April 18th and 19th. So that's kind of interesting because the 19th is when we have this triple conjunction in Aries. And at the very same time, we also have this beautiful Venus moon thing right next door. So, that's like two very different flavors in one room. And then that'll be really a fun experiment, I think. Just look at the different house topics, look at the house topics for Aries, be like, well, what does that look like? And then look at your house topics to have to do with Taurus. That should look very different. This is very different. One's very stable, the other one is not. And then we get Venus, yeah, cozying up to Uranus. So this perfects on the 23rd of April. But even like the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, Venus, maybe like with relationships, if you feel like around this time of April you need more space or independence or freedom in your relationships to do what you want or need to do, that could be going on. Sometimes Venus needing to assert or establish their independence on a thing. Um, Art projects, creative projects, anything about that. This is a time of breakthrough, maybe sudden insight, making weird art, really awesome weird art. Um, could be interruptions with all of these things, interruptions with relationships, art projects. If you are pursuing justice, this could be some breakthrough or set unexpected thing in some justice process. It could also be interruptions to that justice process. Because Venus is in Taurus, they have agency to deal with Uranus. Uranus is in their house. So I'm very hopeful that this is going to present in more of a constructive way where it's like constructive themes around independence, freedom, and relationship, or breakthroughs, insights, ingenuity, innovation in relationships or with matters of justice or fairness, approaching those things in a different or unique or novel way, trying new things, introducing novelty, all that could be going on. If there's something you really want to enjoy, I would, for the most part, lean into that. with Venus with Uranus, especially if it's something you've never done before. That could be really cool. Even if it's just a new ice cream flavor, you know? Then moons with Jupiter on the 23rd, actually a day before. Yeah, April 22nd. Put a note on your calendar as well to leave early for work on Wednesday, April 22nd. Uh, avoid drama you don't want to be a part of. Don't hand in applications. I know the moon is in Cancer. It's really good in Cancer. It's with Jupiter, but let's wait until the moon gets past 9 degrees, which is not going to be until like, I'm going to be conservative, like around 6 a.m. on the 22nd. So let's see. Yeah, after 6 a.m. on the 22nd. Wait until after then to hand in applications. Um, Still might need to leave a little early for work. Even after planets separate, they're still getting the dregs of whatever that relationship was. I do notice that that planet is still that aspect, though very weakened, is still operative, even when that there's still close by degree there, even if separating. So wait till about 6 a.m. on the 22nd to do things with less delays. And then Moon Jupiter, cool, cool, cool. There's a benefic enclosure on the 22nd, later in the day from 5:52 p.m. Central Time until the next day, April 23rd at 1:52 p.m. There is a Chiron square happening during that time. So it's kind of funny this month. We get a couple lunar benefic enclosures, but like one of them has a Pluto Venus square in it, and now this one has a Chiron moon square in it. So it's, there it's a caveat. It's probably productive, constructive. Maybe not the warmest and fuzziest benefic enclosure, but that's the evening of the 22nd into the afternoon of the 23rd. And on the 23rd, we get that Venus Uranus independence thing uh, perfecting, and really then Venus helping to usher Uranus into Gemini. So Venus makes the trip into Gemini and then welcomes Uranus as they come in there on the 25th. And as soon as both of these planets get into Gemini, they get plugged right into all that outer planet stuff. So Venus will first get that trine from Pluto and a sextile from Neptune, and then Uranus will also be plugging into that when they enter Gemini. For that means in like April 23rd, 24th, um, all of those things I was mentioning about relationship, beauty, justice, and how that might be affected by Uranus, now it's really being amplified, really being dialed up. Uh, so relationships, beauty, love, art, pleasure, joy, what you do that feels good, your preferences, your values. That all of those topics might be having some kind of, I don't know, necessarily change, could be some kind of change or even like an internal realization around those Venusian themes, sudden bursts of insight, anything that helps you make a constructive change in your life regarding Venus themes. That could be going on around the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. Let's talk about Uranus for a little bit and then we'll wrap up. Not too much left. So, not to put anyone on the spot, but if you can think to last year from July 7th to November 7th of 2025, that was the last time we had Uranus and Gemini, they dipped in here for just a minute and then they dipped back into Taurus on November 11th. And now they're back for good for 7 years. And they'll be here until 2032. So we've got 7 years really of Uranus in Gemini, and Uranus changes things. All of the outer planets change things, but they do it in different ways. So Uranus generally does their change in a more sudden, unexpected, disruptive, abrupt, like very abrupt kind of way, um, or just a very unexpected way. And, I've been delighted sometimes unexpectedly. It's not always bad surprises, but surprises nonetheless. So interruption, disruption with Gemini house topics over the next 7 years, but also ingenuity, innovation, sudden breakthroughs, insights, experimentation, novelty, doing things differently than you've done them in the past. A lot of times people are like, well, what do you mean doing things differently? And I always just say, whatever you were doing, however you were doing those areas of life, now Uranus comes in there and says, we're going to do it different. So if you were, say, um, I don't know, like living a really conservative life where you didn't do a lot of different things, I don't know, like didn't go out to the bar or anything like that, maybe Uranus comes in and says, hey, you ever thought about going out to the bar? Or maybe you're going to the bar too much. And now Uranus says, you ever think about staying home? So it's always context dependent. It changes whatever is around. So look around, see what's going on. For me, this is my fifth house. Oh God, there could be so many things. But I'm guessing that my art is about to get even weirder than it already has been. Um, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be fine. And yeah, I think also it's going to be right on my IC. And the first thing, of course, is that the fence right by the place where I live is different. That changed. Probably going to be very quickly, so I'll have a new fence line by my home. If someone's like a theoretical Aries rising, that Uranus is going to be affecting the third house. And so maybe there's different ways of locomotion or short distance travel. Actually, I have one for this. So I'm dating an Aries rising. Um, Last summer, the little preview that we got of this, he got an electric scooter unexpectedly, randomly. Like someone was like, hey, do you want to buy my electric scooter for a very discounted rate? And then he was buzzing around the neighborhood very quickly in his electric scooter. So, sure, great, excellent. Different ways of doing short distance travel. So, lots to ponder, but don't forget about last year, July through November, because that might give you some clues as to what might be changing or shifting. And then, I mean, I heard Kelly Surtees say this years ago about, I think it was when we were getting ready to have Uranus go into Taurus. And Kelly Surtees said something like, I'm paraphrasing, but like the Uranus transit through a bunch of house topics, it's not always going to feel the best. It's not always going to be comfortable. But by the end of that transit, usually people are much more authentic in that area of their life or are able to be more authentic with those topics. So, one example that I have is I have a Taurus fourth house. So Uranus has been moving through my home and living situation stuff for the last 7 years. And yeah, it's been a pretty tumultuous 7 years with my living situation and my private life. Uh, and now, after 7 years of Uranus in my private life has entirely changed. It's entirely different. And really, long story short, it went from being bad to good. My private life used to be really bad, and now it's really good. So I'm also in my private life, in my home, in my living situation. I am able to be the most authentic I have been able to be maybe in my whole life. So Uranus changed a lot. It did some disruptive things. It knocked, it reflected my parents and their property. They lost a lot of trees to a few storms over those years. A lot of big old oak trees came down. Um, and a bunch of good stuff happened. So, yeah, don't be too worried. It's coming in there. That's on the 25th. I'm kind of happy Venus is in there with it too. I'm just hoping that'll sweeten things. And I mean, it could just make them relational, but yeah, it'll sweeten the deal, I think, a little bit. Okay, there's a few little things to clean up for the end of the month, but let me check in with chat and see if there's any questions or concerns. I'm getting to the end of the month too, so if I've not gone over any dates you want me to go over, this is the time to ask. Hello, Fallen. It's good to see you again. Yeah, this is why it's good too to journal. My journal practices have been terrible for the last few years, honestly. But how I have remedied that to keep track of things is I just have like the sloppiest, scribbliest, most disorganized, but kind of organized notebook where I just scribble some words for the day. Or at the end of the month, I'll summarize in just a few words what happened, the big notes for that month, so that when I look back, I can remember. But even though I've really had to kind of get into a habit of doing that very utilitarianly, in other parts of my life, I have used journaling as a very therapeutic modality. I've got journals on journals on journals, and I generally have a hard time going even back into those. And now I'm in a season of my life where I just don't want to journal at all. I have no desire to do my whole emotional thing on paper. Um, and I'll probably have a season later where I will want to do that again. But even if you don't feel like journaling, it's if you're an astrologer and you're serious about watching this stuff, just scribble shit down somewhere. It doesn't have to be good. Uh, hey Lau, nice to see you. Oh, hello, Aries rising. They lost their truck, which was in the family, was my home. Oh no. So then Aries rising, the Uranian unexpected thing, the disruption was losing your truck, which was your family and your home, which is a big deal. Suddenly, very Uranus, and then having to take care of some family matters out of state. So, and the third house too, for Aries risings, the third house too is, of course, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, in-laws, like everyone who's not your parents, basically. It's like everyone else. So, if you had to deal with some family matters that had to do with anyone who was not a parent as well, that would be third house. I'm sorry to hear that that happened. Yeah, that's an unfavorable uh, demonstration of what those transits can be. So I hope things get sorted out, or better now at least. Yes. Oh, someone's asking me a personal question. Well, thanks. Wow. I don't believe in love languages because like it was made by that weird guy, but I do kind of like still like the idea of like people just having we all have different preferences about how we like to be communicated with. And I love when people ask me questions. Um, okay, I make movement art, dance art. I have a lot of mediums. I used to draw a lot. Uh, Last winter, I saw a bunch of people who were taking the jellied cranberry, in the can that you can like slice. I love jellied cranberry from a can. And people were freezing it and then carving it. Someone made like a beautiful city skyscape skyline out of jellied cranberry. And so last fall, I froze a bunch of jellied cranberry and I sculpted my first sculpture, which was a hippo. Everyone hated it. Only my boyfriend, because he's has to say he likes it, but no one else liked it. And I did take a bite out of it. I did eat it at the end. So that was a thing that I did. That was like one of those weird creative projects that just like it comes up and you just can't stop thinking about it and you just have to do it to just get it out. So that was my cranberry sculpture. Mostly dance. I'm mostly a dancer. Yeah. I write. I'm a writer, technically, kind of. Uh, Not usually poetry, but I got some poetry going on. Oh, and music. I like music. It's really fallen off. Every Mercury retrograde, I go back to my guitar. So I play guitar like 3 times a year, and it's always during Mercury retrograde. But I used to write, like when I was in high school and college, I had written like 30 songs. I had like a catalog of 30 songs that I would go to open mic nights with and stuff. But that's it feels so long gone. Some of my art is online. I can't necessarily recommend anyone go watch my dance stuff because it's definitely like if you're a client of mine, don't. It's spicy. But yeah, if you're not a client of mine, go for it. Uh, I'll leave it at that. And now I take pictures. Yeah, last thing I guess. Uh, the sun is in Aries. I've been taking pictures. So people who sign up for my newsletter, every month I start my newsletter with some nature photo that I took that month. So that's been a big medium for me as well. I have a fifth house with Gemini in there. So my Gemini fifth house is going to have a lot of mediums, and I'm going to have to circle back around to stuff because I can't seem to be consistent. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I definitely consider myself an artist. Oh, and I used to paint. Some of those back there are mine. Hold on, I'll show you. This one is mine, and this one is also mine. Uh, the big one's from a dumpster, and the other ones are from my friend. So, yeah, pretty much everything. I have Venus on my first house. So that's also why this is like this. I did cover the Aries triple conjunction, Natalie. If you want to go back there, definitely did do that. I didn't bring Mercury in as much, but yeah, like the big thing to do, I think, would be to add up all of the house topics for that Mars, Saturn, and Mercury rule. So think about all the things Mars, Saturn, and Mercury rule in your chart based on your rising sign. And then all those topics are going to get squished together. All those topics are going to get squished together. That's one whole way of looking at that triple conjunction. The other way is, I mean, picking apart all the ways that our communication, commerce, and travel are going to be first confused, then busy, then actions, and then Saturn kind of running into a bit of some kind of delay or something like that. And then Mars likewise has to go through that journey of confusion into a lot of like action and decisions and also running into Saturn. So it's almost like Mercury is too helping. Yeah, maybe that's another fun thing to say about it. It's almost like Mercury is helping these two. Like Saturn and Mars are doing their once every 2 year reset button, resetting that their relationship together. And Mercury is helping them plan that, adding a lot of details. And again, maybe even adding in some of those Gemini or Virgo topics into what that Saturn Mars cycle is. Because, yeah, it's interesting because, like, we don't usually have a triple conjunction with these Mars Saturn conjunctions. Our last one was in Pisces. This happened over my moon, and I got a big sliver in my foot. If anyone's been watching me for a while, you may have been here the night that that happened because I had to do one of these immediately after, like basically ramming my foot into something that it wasn't supposed to. Uh, and I had a sliver in my foot for like 4 months. It was sick. It was not good. But I have my moon in there, and it's about feet. That was that. So sometimes not great things can happen. Um, but it didn't have a third planet. It didn't have a third visible planet adding in stuff. I know Neptune was around, but it's already a lot to consider. And so this time it's even more complex, even more to consider that we have this third visible planet adding in all these things. So very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, the if you listen to Austin Coppock talk about Mars Saturn conjunctions, is the opposite of how I talk about it, although I agree with him entirely. But I can't bring myself to use the same languaging. Um, I love how Austin Coppock talks about Mars Saturn conjunctions. But if you want like the hard edged interpretation, go check out what he was saying about it in the annual forecast. I think they talked about it, and I'm sure they'll talk about it again for this month. So definitely don't sleep on what Austin's going to say about it because it'll be the harder edged version of what I'm saying. Da, da, da. Hello, Roralie. Uranus is moving from their seventh house, currently awaiting divorce finalization on a 24-year marriage. Wow, that's a big deal. Yep. So changes, interruptions, disruptions to seventh house partnerships or new things with partnerships, that too. Novelty. Uranus can be rupture sometimes. I also think Mars is that. Before we had Uranus, Mars was definitely in charge of rupturing things, but Uranus also seems to signify that. So in relationship, that often can be separation type stuff. If there's like not every rupture leads to something that can't be repaired, but sometimes. But you're going to be having so much novelty maybe in that area. And then Uranus is moving into your eighth, where they normally have Jupiter. Yeah, the eighth, I mean, now it's going to be all the changes around your sharing and collaboration. Partners' resources, that difference is there because they won't be part of the picture financially, maybe anymore. Changes in how you're able to share your time, energy, money, skills, talents. The eighth house is where we collaborate with others, we interface with others. And so you might be noticing with Uranus in your eighth, a lot of newness, novelty, being able to collaborate with others in a new way that maybe fits way better. So I hope it goes great. Yeah, life is wild. Oh, and circling back around to the person who Uranus in their third, the Aries rising folks, or the Aries rising person here who had a lot of losses there with their truck. Um, Now they are on foot. And so I am really hoping that Uranus in your third can be change in a good way, in a better way. If things have been really unstable, and that's been the case for a long time, the kind of, I don't know, it's almost like does a double negative, does the negative cancel the other negative out? Like if things have always been unstable or for a long time, and then Uranus comes in to change it, and there's something completely new, sometimes what can be completely new is stability. And maybe I'm reaching for that interpretation right now. I could be reaching a little, but the only reason I say that is because I've seen it in my own life where Uranus changes something and it's like less chaotic afterwards because what was before was just a lot of chaos. And then what's new was peace and calm that I actually had to go to a therapist for to be able to be peaceful. Like, wow, this is new and unsettling. Peace. So I'm hoping that we can maybe make this stretch in Uranus will be a change for better. We're a dream. And thank you for sharing that example. Um, Thank you for everyone for sharing your examples because it's all really real stuff. Sometimes what is changed or interrupted is really small, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna rearrange my pantry and do that differently. And sometimes it's way bigger things. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the great questions. Yeah. Yeah, best of luck, everybody. Um, yeah, Uranus does a lot of things. It's not just interrupting stuff. They do lots of other stuff. Prometheus is the other part that gosh, now I forget. I just heard someone remind me that Uranus is also very Promethean. It's Prometheus. There's been other astrologers who have talked about that. I think there's a book like Prometheus the Awakener by someone about this that I still haven't read. And anyway, the myths that are attributed to Uranus, really more mimic like Promethean things about technology. You know, Prometheus took fire from the gods and gave it to the people. This transfer of technology, this sudden innovation that is a huge deal. And so, mm, disruptions, interruptions, and also the way that Prometheus brings a life-changing technology or innovation or something into the picture. Yeah. Best of luck, everybody, with that one. Let's see, is there anything else we need to say about Uranus going in there? I guess maybe one other thing I'm interested in is just the qualitative difference between Taurus and Gemini. Like Uranus and Taurus do not mix. Oil and water. Uranus and Gemini, they mix. Very congruent. Um, Taurus likes everything to stay the same. No change, please. We very deliberately set it up this way. Gemini, on the other hand, very open to change. Very open, new things, novelty, curiosity. Woo, bring it on. Um, Much more congruent. Now, maybe that allows the change to happen with less resistance, or it allows the change to happen more completely. I don't know if this makes it more comfortable for us, but Uranus is going to be more free and I think able to do its changes even more rapidly from Gemini. That's going to be for better, worse, and in between, but very, very different than really having like a caged elephant kind of vibe. Caged, like I think about a rodeo when they have a big bull kind of in a bullpen and it's just not wanting to be in there because who would want to be in there? But Uranus in this place in Taurus would be that energy of this wanting to get out, wanting to break free, but Taurus really locking things in. And the kind of tension that comes from that relationship versus there's not that same conditions for tension like that, I think, when Uranus is in Gemini. So that's really interesting. I'm curious to see how that shakes out, that difference. Glad to hear that, Borelli, that you're happier now after the divorce. Yeah, that's why, when people say things like just got divorced, I never know whether to say sorry, congratulations, or just thanks for telling me. I just say thanks for telling me now because it can go in so many different directions. It can be a good thing, a bad thing, both. Sometimes people are elated. Sometimes people are very sad. So it's all over the map. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to say? 25th, the 26th, we're gonna have a Sun Pluto square. So, speaking of high energy things, so April 25th, that same day that Uranus goes into Gemini, we have the Sun getting into a square with Pluto. And so here there's a bit of tension between the self-expression, the will, and some pressurized situation. So, depending on your level of age, I think the level of agency and freedom to express oneself around this time is probably going to determine how uncomfortable this is. If you are in a really difficult situation where you're not able to express yourself freely or fully, this is the April 25th might be a really irritating day, or the 24th, 25th, 26th. There might be a lot of energy that wants to come out or expression that could be being pressurized, suppressed, oppressed. So, with that kind of tension, making sure that you're taking care of yourself and others such that we don't have bubbling over situations on the April 24th and April 25th. Could be some bubbling over of things if they're not being expressed when they want to be expressed. If you're squashing down with your squash or downer, then on the 24th, 25th of April, oh, it could come out. So Know that that's going on. And then it could also be just a really powerful surge of energy of getting things done. The sun is our will. It's like the sun shines a light on a place, has us more active and busy with those topics, but it also says, where does our will want to carry us? What do I want to do? Because of my roles, my identities, my mind, what do I want to do? And Pluto is injecting a just potent energy source here. Sometimes squares are just potent. It's not that they're conflict, it's not that they're tense all the time. It's just strong. So whatever the ingredients are strong. So now we've got the will, that's just very strong. The self-expression, very potent. So have good outlets, have good stages, good places for that self-expressive energy to go. And maybe you're just able to do a lot that day. Maybe you're able to get a lot done or have a lot of vitality that's been pumped up, as long as you don't overdo it. So that's going on 24th, 25th. I think it perfects on the 26th. We also have a Mercury Jupiter square happening around 25th, 26th. So this could be another good time, maybe a little window where communications might go a little better. Buying and selling, travel, those types of things may happen with a little bit more ease. Being it is a square, benefics and square are great. It's fine, but it can be still requiring maybe a little adjustment, a little pivoting to take advantage of whatever Jupiter is offering. Um, yeah, that could be another recipe for busyness. So, especially around cognitive, mental tasks, emails, communications, that could be really busy. Mars is here, so it could get pretty physical. So, yeah, um, don't overdo it. You know, might have a lot of good energy April 24th through the 26th, but don't overdo it and get burnt out or anything. April 27th, we have a benefic enclosure from 6:11 a.m. Central Time until 2:50 p.m. the next day. So really like a good day and a half on the 27th and the 28th. And then the end of the 28th into the 29th is a malefic enclosure. So the vibes are great leading into the 28th, and then they deteriorate at the end of the 28th from especially 9:07 p.m. Central Time on the 28th until 9:24 in the morning Central Time on the 29th. So the 28th is a Tuesday. This is also an evening to take care of yourself. If you're more in the global Eastern time zones, more oh, that'll be like very early morning universal time, but the further global Eastern time zones you go, the more this stretches into the morning and afternoon on the 29th, this lunar malefic enclosure. So this is where you leave early for work, give yourself extra time. Know that there might be some hard things for you to do these days or things you just kind of got to get done that you don't want to, and that's okay. But if you can choose, it's not like the best time to start a whole new initiative or a whole new project. Please try not to start new projects during this time between 9:07 p.m. Central Time on April 28th until 9:24 a.m. the next day. And that's pretty much the month. It ends with Mercury coming into their engagement with Chiron. The sun already did that. Now it's Mercury's turn. So that's how we go into May. Um, Also, Mercury or Mars Jupiter. That also starts up at the end of the month and completes once we get into May. So I'll have more notes on that next time. But as we reach the end of April, Mars and Jupiter combination, very vital and potent. It's the motivation and energy of Mars, and they're really strong here, wanting to initiate, start things, do things. And then Jupiter is just affirming that, saying, yeah, buddy, let's go, let's do it. So it could be, again, I mentioned this before, but at worst, it can be like overly confident, arrogance, um, yeah, just overconfidence and how that can get us into trouble sometimes. being bombastic. I love that word for it. But Mars is in the overcoming position. So the thing that's really ruling this interaction, it's not the goodwill. It's not the friendship that's the main primary leader of this interaction. It's actually Mars, which is much more into its mission. What are we doing? What's the plan? What, like, the action that's going to take place and the outcome? That's what Mars is interested in. So we might have to remember to be maybe gentle or soft during this square. So we'll see that coming into place at the end of the month. Yeah, last thing, give Mars a mission. Shout out to Dr. Jen Zart, who wrote a really great Bound report. They have a cool little newsletter called the Bound Report, and they do some fun writings periodically. But they had mentioned the other week Robert Hand. And Robert Hand is another teacher that I have listened to a lot. And he talked a lot about Mars having a mission, giving Mars a mission. So thank you, Dr. Zart, for reminding me. And I've been talking about it a lot more again. It's like something I used to talk about and then I forgot about it for a while and I shouldn't have. Because, yeah, giving Mars a mission, like that's the move so much of the time. If you've got a lot of energy, if you're restless and you don't quite know what to do with that, even just like giving Mars a very simple mission can off gas some of that Mars energy. So they'll be on a mission in April into May. Okay, I think that's all I have. I'm gonna see if there's any questions or concerns. Thank you so much for everyone's comments and anecdotes. That really helps to like, yeah, just bring more possibility into what's going on with these configurations. All right, everybody. Looks like you're all doing great. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I will get timestamps out on this stuff in the next day or two. Yeah, so just kind of, I don't know, if there's 2 months to be on your safest stuff, kind of like taking care of yourself extra, taking care of others extra, um, understanding that effing around may lead to finding out. There's like 2 months that really scream that to me in this year, and it's April and October. So for me, like April and October of 2026 are the months for me that I'm like, I need to be on my best behavior. If I'm gonna go get into good trouble, I need to be extra careful when I get into good trouble. Oh yeah, let's look at the times when it's good to do that. Okay. Um, let's see. A couple things I missed. Yeah, because this month's a little weird. I know that we just had eclipses and like everyone was like, oh, sky is falling around the eclipses, but April kind of has my side eye a little bit more even because of this Aries stuff. Uh, I wanted to find. Okay, so maybe best times to make good trouble out there in the world. Potentially tomorrow on Sunday, Monday, when the moon is in Virgo. I would say after that malefic enclosure. Yeah, maybe. Actually, I lied. I don't like Virgo because Mars is over there. Cardinal signs can be okay, like the 1st, the 2nd of April. Not bad days to get into some good trouble. Uh, I take back what I said about Sunday and Monday at the end of March. I don't like that. But then again, maybe like April 16th, the afternoon and onward. That might be a nice on that Thursday. That could be a time. Yeah, those are the times. And then the other thing I forgot. And if you don't know what I mean by that, don't worry about it. When I say good trouble, you'll learn it when you're older. Saturn square. No, the moon. I want to look at the. I kind of spaced out doing my moon Saturn squares about when to not hand in stuff. Okay. So times of the month in April, that maybe not going to be the best time to hand in applications for anything and get an affirmative answer because we want yes, we want Jupiter, Venus. We don't want the moon running into Saturn who says no. So I'm always trying to avoid moon square Saturn or moon opposite Saturn. So that's where that's coming from. So days not to hand in stuff necessarily. April 8th, April 14th and 15th, April 21st, April 27th, April 28th, April 29th. And those are the days not to hand in things. I like that. I like that. I think I might do it like that more often. That was really succinct and like clear. Yeah, cool. I'll do it that way from now on. Um, I think that's it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Wow, tying up so many loose ends. Very big forecast. So next month is May. It's gonna be May. Oh, wow. It's 2026. I started doing this. How long have I been doing this? Is this my 4 year anniversary? This is either my third or my 4 year anniversary of doing these forecasts. My first forecast was May of some year. I don't remember which year. Probably 2023, I assume. 2020. No, it was 2022. Yeah, I think it's my 4 year anniversary coming up this May of doing these. That's fun. Justin Timberlake memes. We're ready. I'm ready for them. That's what I got. Okay, thanks everyone. And then I have not yet scheduled my next forecast. My next office hour is going to be the second Tuesday of the month. I am going back to my normal schedule. I'm not going to be rescheduling my office hours anymore. I got through that weather, so I'm good. And that's going to be on the 14th of May at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Time. So, question and response time for astrology. You can bring your questions. In the meantime, email me your questions between now and then. I've already got a couple questions for the next office hour. One of them is going to be about the lunar nodes in transit and how that relates to the birth chart lunar nodes. So I'm going to have that discussion. Um, yeah, send in any astrology questions to aligninglight@gmail.com. And you do not have to be present for me to answer it. You can always just pop in back, watch the replay later for the office hour. If you can't be there, I'll still answer your question to the best of my ability or try to find resources or other people who are a better person to answer your question because I can't always answer it. My discount code is Equinox. Get 10% off any of my readings until May. So for the month of April, we got that discount code. And then I am again increasing my prices on April 5th by about 10, $15 for each of my services to just help me stay afloat. It's not so I can be more profitable. Granted, I am not taking a vow of poverty or anything, but I am just trying to keep this ship a sailing. Oh, and last thing, this was the piece of news I was so excited to share, and then I forgot till the very end. But I'll probably just keep talking about it for like a while because I'm very proud of myself. I finally hit my 15,000 hours, or 1,500. Yeah, 15,000, I wish. 1,500 hours, over 1,500 consults. I started reading for people in 2020, I think it was like the fall of 2020, after 4 years of studying by myself and with Chris's coursework and all that. Um, Started doing readings, and as of 2026, I have done over 1,500. It was like 1,574. Now it's like 1,578. And that equals almost 1,600 hours, 1,600 hours. So that's like some kind of accomplishment or achievement. I feel like it's worth noting. I'm very happy. I can't believe it's been this many years and I'm still able to do this. So help me to keep helping everyone engage with my services. And I have a bunch of free stuff too. Check out my student resources on my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com. And I have a cheat sheet with a bunch of really cool handy tables. If you need to reference those, I was just talking with someone about how, like, I have so many little handy tables I have to refer to all the time. You think I'd be able to memorize the triplicity table? I haven't. I still need to look at it sometimes. I've got little tabbies and post-it notes everywhere on all my books. So this is a big field of study. Um, I like to have little tables. So check out my beginner guide. It's on my website. It's free. I also have my other favorite astrology learning people, places, books. So check that out. That's on my website as well. And I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a really great month ahead. Hope everything goes very smoothly. And until next time.